Hey friends, welcome. My name is Melody, and this is Swamp Witch Society, where I give you an in depth look at Cajun folklore handed down for generations, some of the seediest, darkest, creepiest history Louisiana has to offer. So this week, we're getting gory, we're getting grotesque, and we're getting gruesome. Sounds great. I am going to bring you a story, and this involves the Axeman murders. So, 1918 and 1919 were really terrifying years for the city of New Orleans. There was a madman on the loose, and he spent his time breaking into homes in the middle of the night and using weapons found in the owner's residence to slaughter them, entire families. He focused mainly on Italian grocers, and this is peculiar because why target that demographic? Why target anyone? This story has a supernatural element to it as well because it, goes on to fuel these crazy folklore legends that music keeps um, the murders away. And I can't say that it's wrong. It's for you to decide. What we do know is that one of the earliest attacks happened in May of 1918, and this was the Maggio family. So Joseph and his wife were asleep behind the grocery store that they owned, and in the night, a panel of wood was chiseled out of the back door. And from there, the attacker reached in, unlocked the door, quietly crept in, used an axe from homeowner's house and snuck into their bedrooms. Now, he slit both of their throats before slaughtering them with an axe. So, Catherine's injuries were so catastrophic that she possibly died from obstructed airway from the blood. Joseph died as well very quickly. They were found the next morning when Joseph's brother Andrew went to look for them. He enters the residence, he discovers the scene, he contacts the police, and he is subsequently arrested for the murders, only to be released due to lack of evidence because Andrew didn't do this. No, no. New Orleans police have been the same, obviously, since 1918. Just weeks later, there was another attack, and this is Louis Bessemer and Harriet Lowe. So they were also asleep in the residence behind the grocery store that they ran. And very similar to the first case, a panel was chiseled out of the door, it was unlocked, and an object was used from inside the residence. Now, both initially survived the attack, with Harriet later dying from complications from her injuries, and for some reason, Lewis being implemented as the murderer, which fell through because Lewis didn't do this. August of 1918, this story is just horrific. Miss Edward Schneider was asleep in her bed when she was attacked in the night. She was 8 months pregnant. The axe murderer tried to kill her, fractured her skull, caused traumatic injuries, but Miss Schneider survived, and 2 days later, she miraculously gave birth to a healthy baby. A few days after this incident, Mr. Joseph Romano was attacked inside of his residence that he shared with his nieces. Now, his nieces heard a commotion. They went to his room and they found Joseph bleeding profusely, severe head wounds, trauma. He was alive. He was able to walk to the ambulance, but he later died from his injuries. And there was no suspect for any of this. Not a suspect. They just kept arresting the wrong people and making accusations that wouldn't stick. There was a pattern here, you know, cutting out the door panel, reaching in, unlocking the door, using a weapon from the home. There's so many things that just tied these murders together. Now, in 1919, the violence continued. There was another couple, Charles and his wife Rosie. Their young daughter Mary were sleeping all in the bed together when they were attacked, just savagely attacked. And unfortunately, Mary was killed with her mother and her father. What a terrible, I don't know, just awful. So you can imagine the amount of fear just starting to run through the city. Now, this was happening in New Orleans, uptown. This was happening in Gretna, which is just a bridge away, just across the river. And these communities are very closely connected, I should say. Later that year, another attack happened on a grocer. Come on, like, do you not eat because you're a demon from hell? Well, we all enjoy the grocery store. Could you please stop? Well, Mike Pepitone was that victim, and his wife and his children were nearby. They were unharmed. However, Mike died from his injuries, and the wife only had recollection of seeing two men fleeing in the night from the scene. So, again, nothing much to go on here. The objects were still being used from inside of the victims' homes to murder them or attempt to murder them. Then this letter shows up, okay? This letter hits the press, and it is written by the quote killer himself, who does not consider himself a man. The killer states that he is a outer worldly being from hell. He's a demon. He's on a mission. He's going to wreak havoc on the city of New Orleans. He's out for blood. He has a request. If you want to be spared, you want your home to be spared, well, then on this particular night in March 1919, you will be playing jazz music from your home. What did the city of New Orleans do? Go buck wild. I mean, dance halls were filled. Jazz music was playing from, every home around. Bands were hired to play. Instruments were being played. And it's wild to think that, like, all of this was going on, which should be joyous, like music, you think happy, dancing, but this was like a survival mode for these folks. And they were drenched in fear while this is happening. But sure enough, no murders took place that night. I think that's wild. So, despite witnesses, despite arrest, police investigations, call it what you will, there were no arrest made in this case. I mean, nothing definitive, nothing that stuck, and the Axeman was never identified. So the murders had a brief pause, they seemed to just stop in the city of New Orleans. However, there's like these ties to murders that were happening in other parts of the state that were very, very similar. So in Alexandria, for instance, which is in southwest Louisiana, and where the 1911 and 1912 murders, the ritual killings of Louisiana, that were brought to you by the Church of Human Sacrifice, so little Clementine over there, she was an 18-year-old African American woman who was tried and convicted for the murders that were very similar in 1912. They were axe murders. These people broke into homes of African American families. So, like I said, another demographic is targeted here. And they used weapons that were found inside the home, mostly axe and knives as well. They would slaughter the victims, children included, flee the scene. So this happened throughout the areas of Lafayette, Crowley, Alexandria, and here you have, this 6-year hiatus where there were no murders committed, and then all of a sudden they start back up in New Orleans. Now, there were ties to the Church of Human Sacrifice and a congregation in New Orleans. Not sure what the ties were, but it was thought that Clementine, the axe murderer of Southwest Louisiana, could not have done this on her own. And while she was incarcerated, and all of her family was incarcerated as well, these murders continued. And my red string theory is that This was like a sleeping cell. This was a serial killer. They began in 1911, 1912. This young woman was held accountable. Now, she did confess to 17 murders, so height of the Jim Crow era, was her confession, viable? I don't know. I don't really know. And not a whole lot of attention was given to it properly. We'll just leave it there. But say one of her affiliates, you know, hauled ass, went to New Orleans, started a new life, lived a seemingly ordinary life like most serial killers do, and then just couldn't contain themselves anymore and went on an axe murdering spree. But this time targeted a different demographic. So, for no one to have been held accountable for all of these deaths is truly tragic, and I wish the families could have gotten justice. Public service announcement: pick up your fucking garden tools, okay? Don't leave your garden tools in the yard. I got so freaked out doing these stories that I put all of mine in the house. Try to find them. I can't even find them. Won't get me. Till next time, thank you for joining me. Stay safe. Peace.